Hello OMAF world, this is Tom McFetridge with Ozark Film and Video Productions, here to do a little bit of an audio demo. We're working in Pro Tools, which the software doesn't matter, none of the plugins I'm using matter. It really all comes down to principles, techniques, and an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish here. So I've pulled up an older session from a series of commercials we did for NWTI, which is a local education institution, and we're gonna take a look here. I'm gonna turn my head here to bring up the screen. We've got Pro Tools over here. It's actually an older version because, again, the software itself doesn't matter. It is what you are doing with it that matters. So anything will do this. Actually, this plugin you're looking at right here is just my voice track, so that I'm actually running through the Pro Tools rig. As you can see here, Tom talking. We're going to move that up and let that be, make that just sort of bye-bye. And now we're going to go ahead and go full screen for a few minutes so that I can show you what we have going on. So I'm going to bring up my video screen. Sometimes we get this, sometimes we don't. Frankly, if it's an easy enough thing, I don't even send video over. This is an example of something that doesn't necessarily need it because I don't have any sound cues. But we're going to count the people. So we've got this woman. I'm going to listen to her real quick.
Hands-on is very important.
Same person.
Helps to.
Okay, person number 2. So we're going to make a new track for that person. I'll move it down here. I would recommend anytime you're doing this kind of thing, if you have the access to do so, if you know their name, put their name over here. So we're going to call her Susan. I have no idea what her name really is, but we're going to call her Susan. And this is Becky.
People that need a condenser to actually put
Alright, that's more of her.
version of the schools.
Definitely affordable.
Alright, that's Becky again. And so I'm going to shrink this down a little bit more just so that I can see what I'm doing. And so what else do we have?
It's definitely affordable.
It helps to know that I didn't have.
Alright, this is a third person. So, and obviously they all sound very different from one another, and that's okay, but we need to get the levels right and any offending parts of the sound handled, essentially. Any problematic things, and I'm going to get there. So we're making more tracks. I like to put everybody on their own track, especially in video work. You can afford to do that. You don't have to worry about track count near as much. So we've got our people. They're separated out. We've got a video track. We've got, here are our people. They each have their own track. I'll call this Jane. All right. So let's talk about track types for a minute. Actually, let's talk about monitoring. And in order to do that, I'm going to bring up a master track. And what I'm going to talk about for just a second, I'm going to come back to you. Monitoring is incredibly important. The sound of your speakers will determine the sound of your mix. So if your monitors have not enough bass, your mix will have too much bass. If you have too much highs in your monitors, then your mixes will all sound like they've got, you know, a sock over it. It really is everything. You don't really know what you're doing with the knobs and switches and plugins and all of that stuff if where you're listening is not good enough. And frankly, this room is terrible. I had a great room that now is occupied by the Springdale Media Arts, and you know, it's awesome. I'm going to get this room up to snuff, but I have a little secret that shouldn't be a secret. This kind of thing was developed a while back, and what these do is software that basically corrects for the room. And so what I'm not going to show you today is that we hooked up a microphone, we let sounds be played through this software, through the speakers, the microphone measures it, fixes any problems. So that's what you're seeing here. And so when I turn it on and off, there's a pretty substantial amount of EQ. Now, to the recording that you guys are listening to, this may sound thin. Actually, looks like, yeah, it's going to sound a little bit thinner. And all of that, but in this room it actually sounds accurate, and accurate is more important than, can you jam to it, right? So anyway, we've shut that down. All to say, monitoring is crucial. If you have to do headphones, do some headphones, but if you mix for hours, headphones are going to give you a headache. And so I would suggest getting the best, not most expensive, the best monitors that you can get for your budget, whatever they are, and then use a utility like this, and then always listen on as many different things as you possibly can, especially starting out. Before you get the confidence to understand what it is you're doing, you need to listen to your mixes, especially with music. Go to the car and listen to it. Take it home and put it through your TV. Listen to it through the worst thing you have, and then listen to it through the best thing you have. Most of all, listen to it through things you're familiar with. I use these anymore because this is what I listen to almost everything. So, if you listen to $20 headphones every day, use your $20 headphones, because that's going to give you the most accurate sound. Anyway, monitoring, as you can tell, very important to getting things right. And software doesn't have to be expensive. Just look for room correction software. All right, so let's talk about tracks. So we have audio tracks. Those tracks hold the sound upon them. They have slots for plugins, and then depending on your software, somewhere there will be an option to send that signal somewhere else besides to the mix. And so a lot of these softwares will also have a virtual mixer. And so we've got our master channel right here, where everything's coming to at the end of the chain, because it's assigned to go there through these. And so that's basically, these tracks all go to here. If we were to send a track, which I do want to talk about for a second, to a bus per se, I'm going to send it to bus 1 and 2 so that it's stereo. Now we have this here. This right now isn't going anywhere. It's just being sent to bus 1 and 2, and since I have nothing to represent bus 1 and 2, it's literally just flying into space with nowhere to go. So what do? We find an aux input or a return, depending on what your software is. We find that aux. It says no input. We go to bus 1, it's mono. Hey, look! Now you're probably hearing 2 of me, which sounds terrible. So, yeah, that's that. You can use it for all kinds of things, and we're going to get into that just a little bit here in a bit. So, I am going to get rid of that, and we're going to go back to our edit screen, because really, most of the time we all work in this. The mix screen is great when I'm chasing down a plugin or doing something that, requires me needing to, look at the whole picture and see what I'm missing from a levels standpoint, but I rarely even use that. So, moving on. On our audio tracks, we've got voice. Now, almost anything you run into a mixing system, you're going to run through 2 plugins or 2 processors back when it was the old stuff that was rack mounted. And so, EQ and compression. I personally like to do EQ before compression. I don't use this EQ very often, so this will be fun. Then compressor. Alright, same thing with this. I don't use this very often. So let's see what we can do with Becky. Becky's got a lot of vocal presence, so she's already doing well.
Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job. Learning the skills and being hands-on.
All right, we're gonna turn up so I can hear it a little more. Ooh, interesting. All right, so when I play back, I'm gonna.
Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job.
She's sounding pretty good, but a little bit muddled. I'm gonna have to mute myself here and there because we're gonna get loud and this is gonna cause feedback, and I don't want to have to cut this thing. So let's give it a shot.
Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job. Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job. Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job.
All right, so let's talk about compression first. And basically compression, if I had a description or, you know, the best way to simplify it is like literally having a little automatic robot just turning the volume down on the hottest, the loudest things. And so when we look here, we can see her come right out of the gate with a statement. And she says,
learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job.
now did you hear her trail off? That is a natural human thing. Everybody tends to start really loud, and then by the time they're done saying something, we're down here, something like that. So that's exactly what this is for. Really helps with singers as well. When they hit the loudest notes, it squashes it and it makes it sound even and beautiful. That's also so that you can hear somebody's very intimate whispery voice in a vocal track or something and still get all that presence. And so what we're doing is I'm going to mute this, and we're going to find, I don't usually mute this, but I want to talk about this for a minute without her just repeating over and over and over again. So we're seeing a little bit of gain reduction here. That's what this is, GR. The reason I'm bringing this up is this is absolutely the most important part of compression, is what are you taking off and how much is it doing? So we've got a ratio, which is how much that knob is being turned if it were. I like a lot less aggressive than a 3. I like a 2 or a 2.5 to 1 a lot of times. Now, some very misunderstood terminology. Attack and release. What in the world is that? Attack is how quickly that knob, that compression happens. And so this is 10 milliseconds. I like that. Much faster than that, it starts to sound really slappy. You can probably turn it as late as 20 or 30, but you will notice the later this is, or the higher this number is, the more you'll have to pull your threshold down in order for your sound to cross that threshold and then be reduced, which is the compression. Now, why do we do this?
Very important to be effective at your job.
So
learning the skills
now
and being hands-on is very important to be effective.
now that it's being reduced more on the top end, I can bring the overall signal up. And I generally do this in the mastering
Learning the
phase.
skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job. Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job.
All right, so let's turn it off.
Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job.
See, all of a sudden now you can hear her say, "Be effective at your job," and let's take a look. You always want to trim the edges of these vocal tracks.
Effective at your job.
So important to make sure that anywhere there's a file cut, especially in Pro Tools, some softwares may have some automatic. I like to turn most of that stuff off because we want everything.
On is
And then I've made a little crossfade here so we don't have a pop, but you want to check those from a little ways back.
and hands-on is very
You can't really tell it's there. And then we want to check the front.
Learning the
So she gets a pretty good start, but I'm still going to fade.
learning the skills and being
There you go. So we've cleaned that section up. Sometimes I go linearly, but since this is short and I'm working on one person.
is definitely affordable.
All right, interesting. So that line is just quieter. Some programs let you just simply turn up a clip like that.
Is definitely affordable.
Some of them will require you to do a volume automation, which is, you're basically telling the mixer, you'll see it here, turn the volume. Where is that one? It's Becky, so watch. Her volume will go up when I hit play.
They can get back in the workforce quicker.
Is definitely affordable.
It helps
So
to know.
it literally moved the fader. You can do all kinds of fancy stuff with that. Typically, I like to avoid having too many things to chase down when my client makes a change. And so that really, for me, is what drives a lot of the fact that I've got these people on different tracks. I'm using clip, for lack of a better term, clip gain to turn the gain up and down on one clip where I've got this same person that she's at a different volume at that moment. She was having a different thought. Her mind was in a different place than it was on her first thought, on her first statement, and so the volume was variable. But the reason that I do it like this is so that if I use those rubber bands, if you will, that automation, and the client starts making all kinds of changes and things like that, it's really tiresome to have to go back in and re-automate little volume changes on one track when I could have just had different people on a different track. So that's why I do that. And so EQ is also an interesting thing. People are always trying to get things to where they sound absolutely perfect before it even hits the mastering part of the and for me, most of that pop and that sizzle and everything that you get out of a great recording, I get here. The hype. Let's call it the hype. That's way better. So what we're doing with the individual EQs are solving problems. You put a microphone, a lapel microphone on somebody, and it's stuck to their chest. You're getting all the meat, all the beef from their tone, the lower end. And so a lot of times that's what we're handling. I'm going to turn my monitors up, which makes this a little echoey. Frankly, this rig was not made to do what we're doing here. It's made to mix sound. I'm going to turn myself off, and we're going to listen to her.
Learning the skills and being hands-on is learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job. Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job. Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job. Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job. Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at.
Okay, I mean, she sounds pretty good. I had a little bit of buildup in that chest region like I was talking about, but I mean, this a lot of times is all it takes. It's just a little bit of a change. You see things cranked all over the place, you probably need to re-examine. And the biggest thing with EQ is you're equalizing or you're creating space for other things in the mix most of the time. I mean, yes, you can hype something to death for effect, but if you open up a mix of anything and you've got the highs all cranked up and the lows all cranked, basically if everything's all cranked up because it sounded better when you turned the knob, try turning it all off and start all over again and ask yourself, what would I remove from this situation, not what would I add? Because you're going to end up adding a lot of that when you master this, and that's coming. So that's all we did for her. I'm going to go through here a little bit quicker, and we're going to get with Jane's sound now. I'm going to use a different plugin, because why the hell not? Pardon my French. All right, this is a channel strip. Very similar. Really, you got, with this, you got EQ, compression, with this, you got EQ up here, compression up here, EQ down here, and the chain is EQ, filter, what is filter? Oh, filters are these guys. So it goes EQs, filters, dynamics, which when you hear the words dynamics, yes, that is compression. The reason why sometimes they call it dynamics is because you may be doing expansion, which is like gating, but you're turning the volume up when something's present. You use that when you're fixing things that are completely destroyed. And if I have enough time, I'll get into that. You can always get a hold of me if you need to. So, let's use this plugin. Same concept. So we're going to go through and look at our compression.
Helps to know that I didn't have to sell an arm and a leg just to be able to do my next step in the career choice that I wanted. It helps to know that I didn't have to sell an arm and a leg just to be able to do my...
We're turning that attack just arbitrarily to roughly 10. We're going to pull this release down to around 80 or 100. You can do 200, but it's not going to let go of the volume knob. That's really what the release is like how quickly that volume comes back after the threshold has been triggered. And you don't want it too long, or you've heard things like in your camera or your phone where somebody hollers and the volume drops and then picks back up. We're trying to avoid that. We want it to sound very natural. And so that's, again, attack and release. So threshold,
it helps
we set
to know
by
that I didn't have to
looking
sell an arm
and
and a leg
listening.
just to be able to do
Mostly
my
looking, and
next
if I'm
step
being
in
honest,
the
this is
career
digital
choice that I
technology.
wanted. It
I'd love to
helps
say we
to
all
know
just use
that
our
I
ears.
didn't have to
We
sell
got
an
all
arm
these
and a
wonderful
leg
tools.
just to
Use
be
that
able
to
to
your
do
advantage.
my next step
I
in
like
the
to see
career
between
choice
3
that I
and
wanted.
6
It
decibels
helps to know
of
that I didn't have to
attenuation most of
sell
the
an
time.
arm and a leg just to be able
6
to
the loudest, 3 on the medium stuff. And now I'm going to turn this up and check it a little bit. I'm just going to make it echoey in here.
it helps to know that I didn't have to sell an arm.
Definitely affordable.
It
Alright, since she is so much quieter, what I'm going to do is I just reset my threshold.
Definitely affordable.
it helps to know that I didn't have to.
Trim is your input volume on something.
Definitely affordable.
It helps to know that I didn't have to sell an arm and a leg just to be able to do my.
Let's see how they compare now.
Skills and being hands.
Know that I didn't have to sell an arm and a leg just to be able to do my next step in the career.
Definitely affordable.
It helps to.
Alright, so we hear a large disparity in the amount of high end. Now this is one moment where I would crank some highs into this. It's probably because in this shot...
It helps to know.
No, her law of... Oh, she has a mask on. That's why. Alright. Film production in 2021. So we're going to take that mask off sonically.
It helps to know that I didn't have to sell an arm and a leg just to be able to do my next step in the career choice that I wanted.
If you see the term Q, you're seeing that it widens out the amount of EQ that you're actually doing.
It helps to know that I didn't have to sell an arm and a leg just to be able to do my next step in the career choice that I wanted.
Alright, so as you can see, yes, I had to add a bunch here because we had a problem. This was not to hype it, this was to correct it. So we've got her, we've got Becky up
It's
here.
definitely affordable.
It helps to know that I didn't have to.
It's definitely affordable. Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective.
I'm actually going to turn her down a little bit because I don't like to ride up near the top of anything.
It's definitely affordable.
It helps to know that I did.
And being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job. The skills and
Have to sell an arm and a leg.
Alright, so they're close. And since I'm going through a whole other set of that, that's about all we need. We don't need to obsess for 3 days over the up and down of those two tracks. They're ballpark close. Trust yourself to say, yeah, that's close enough, because we like to do this compression in layers. And compression is one of the most important things you do when you mix. So let's go to Susan. I'm going to be real with you. I'm a lot faster with that channel strip because it's all in one piece. I just wanted to show you guys that there was more than one way to skin a cat. In fact, never mind. I'm not going to get lazy. I go down to... I don't use half this crap, so don't be intimidated. Let's see. Yeah, here's one. It's kind of fun. I like this guy. Look at simple, easy, but it sounds great. This one has a good algorithm. I've used it for years.
What we've learned via textbook and via lecture.
All right, so the way that you find it with this one, this is your gain reduction, this orange bar.
What we've learned via textbook and via lecture to actually put hands on a patient. What we've learned via textbook and via lecture to actually put hands on a patient. What we've learned via textbook and via lecture to actually put hands on a patient.
Now, one thing I know about this particular plug is even though it says 3, it sounds more like 6 and has nothing to do with the release. I think it actually has to do with whatever ARC is, and so that's as far as I'm going to go with that one. And then I'm going to bring Mr. EQ into this. Oh yeah, we're going to use a different one. Let's just go with the family here. Renaissance EQ. Why not? All right.
What we've learned
This
via
looks so old school, by the way. I haven't used this in a long time. I like that channel strip. But it's healthy to know how to make the same thing happen in just about any piece of software because it really is all the same thing, you know. With EQs, by the way, I know it's confusing. They can move, you know, but basically you're trying to chase down your frequencies. I'll give you a tip. Everything that's electronic it runs off of 60 hertz, and so
it helps to take what
So if you've got things that if you got a humming air conditioner, you basically set your EQs at 60, 120, and even 240. And then you take your Qs and you tighten those up as much as possible. Just make that number as high as possible. This is not a great EQ for this particular function, but then you're notching, and so that would kill your air conditioner. That one's not on. But I digress. We're just doing a little bit of fun with her.
it helps to take what we've learned via textbook and via lecture to
Turn it up
actually
just a
put
little.
hands on a patient. We have a lot of people that need a condensed version of the schools where they can get back in the workforce quicker. It helps to
She really didn't have anything that needed EQ. I'm going to leave it there because maybe I'll need it later, but I'm not... There's a little tinniness, but that frankly is my microphone. So I'm now cleaning this up. You may have noticed I know a lot of keyboard shortcuts. That's how I'm moving around so quickly.
need a condensed
I started in audio, and my editors, I had a couple editors that may not have liked me or whatever, so they would give me like a whole day's worth of work to do at 4:30 in the afternoon and tell me it needed to be done by 8 o'clock the next morning. And for the first like year of my job, they did that to me on a consistent basis, and so I just learned how to do this really fast, how to utilize all the keyboard shortcuts to zoom around, and it's fun. I'm not as fast as I used to be, but when I was in my early 20s, I used to get a lot of compliments on how quick I was. Although speed is never the most important thing. So, we've got 3 tracks of vocals on here. They've been EQ'd and compressed. I think they're all at relatively similar volumes.
Skills and being
a textbook and via
She's
lecture
a little
to
quiet.
just to be able to do
a textbook and via lecture to actually put hands on a patient. We have a lot of people
important to be effective.
textbook and via lecture to
Definitely affordable.
it helps to know that I didn't
of the schools where they can get back.
All right, cool. They're all at relatively the same volume. You know, I'm also hitting the save key every 3 seconds. I cannot reiterate how important it is to just build that into your knee-jerk reaction. most programs auto-save anymore. Some of these older ones don't. Pro Tools is built off of a very old architecture. I'm not sure what version this is. It's probably 11, and I don't even know what we're on now, because for sound for picture, you need stability and dependability. When I got somebody sitting in here with me, it needs to work. I don't care if I have the latest, greatest if it can't deliver. So, anyway, I am going to, bring on some music. So we bring on a new track, stereo audio track, bam. I love to keep these things labeled. Some people color code them too. I don't have time for that. That's what assistants would be for, but we don't have those here. So, let's see what we got as far as sound. Oops, sorry. Okay. That doesn't sound like a nursing commercial to me. I literally pulled a bunch of tracks just out of our transfer. This is from stuff we've been working on lately. That's really boring. Whatever that is horribly boring. Sorry, whoever wrote that. That is absolutely... Fake Foo Fighters, nice. Yeah, that's boring too, but you know what? It kind of works, so I'm gonna put it in here. And it looks like...
Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job.
It helps to take what we've learned via textbook and via lecture to actually put hands on a patient. We have a lot of people that need a condensed version of the schools where they can get back in the workforce quicker.
It's definitely affordable.
It helps to know that I didn't have to sell an arm and a leg.
I mean, I could use that. It works okay. Doesn't really kick the mood up, does it? So let's try. Bridging limits, creation instrumental. Sorry, for just kind of. What is this? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to find something else. Why not?
Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job.
It helps to take what we've learned via textbook and via lecture to actually put hands on a patient. We have a lot of people that need a condensed version of the schools where they can get back in the workforce quicker.
It's definitely affordable.
It helps to know that I didn't have to sell an arm and a leg just to be able to do my next step in the career choice that I wanted.
I'm going to go ahead and preface this too, this because we're a professional production company. This video that you're seeing in my preview is not finalized. You may see frame dropouts and things like that. That's not what our productions look like. This is a preview for audio. You can see here there's a transition that's missing, and it's just because this computer wasn't built to play back all the fancy effects that our other ones are. This is for sound, so... And I don't need that particular effect to make a sound effect or anything. So otherwise, we just print it to one piece of video, commit it, and I'd have all the reference I need. But
Wanted.
all right. This is a taste thing. Very subjective. Do what you want. Obsessing about the song ending perfectly at the end of a commercial that is literally going to be in the middle of a YouTube product or something like that. It sounds very local news. Like your local news station, their TV commercials. if you really think about it, big national spots, there is no ending or finality to the music. You're already watching another spot before you had a chance to even think about that. So that's just a rant from a guy that made a lot of television commercials in the 1990s. So yes, I am that old. All right, so we're getting there. We're on music, so I've got about 10 minutes, so I'm going to kind of move a little quicker than I wanted to initially. Basically, the concept with music is you need to make room for the voice. Yes, I've turned it down a little bit, but how do you really carve it in so you can get a little more presence out of that music and still keep it out of the way of the vocals? What I like to use is a multi-band compressor. I forgot where it is. There it is. This basically acts as an EQ compressor, for lack of a better term. It will find the sound coming in and turn down parts of it in the frequency range depending on what it's hearing and how I have the knobs set. So
Very important to be effective at your job.
It helps to take what we've learned via textbook and via lecture to actually put hands on a patient. We have a lot of people that need a condensed version of the schools where they can get back in the workforce.
Do you hear the difference?
Very important to be effective at your job.
It helps to take what we've learned via textbook and via lecture to actually put hands on a patient. We have a lot of people that
Where it was
need a
actually
condensed
affecting things. So basically, I'm just letting this actively turn down the parts of the music that are in the vocal range. Yes, I have turned the whole thing down 20 decibels, but I've carved some room in there for the voice. And so once I get into mastering, I may find I can get a little more of this music, but it's going to stay out of that part. And yes, you can just do this with an EQ and use a little bit of compression to keep the dynamic parts of the music out. This piece has a pretty consistent sound throughout. Some pieces, they're very dynamic. There may be a quiet spot and then it gets really, really loud. So one part of the song is working, another part's just, I love the sound of it, but it's just going too hard. So we're using a bit of volume, but we're also using EQ and compression to kind of make room again for that. So that concept is pretty much there. Let's listen one more time.
Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job.
It helps to take what we've learned via textbook and via lecture to actually put hands on a patient. We have a lot of people that need a condensed version of the schools where they can get back in the workforce quicker.
It's definitely affordable.
It helps to know that I didn't.
That sounded more muffled.
We have a lot of people that need a condensed version of the schools where they can get back in the workforce quicker.
It's definitely
Via textbook and via lecture to actually put hands on a patient. We have a lot of people that need a condensed via textbook and via lecture to actually put hands on a patient. We have a lot of people that.
Sorry, just making sure that was right.
Arm and a leg just.
Yeah, she's good. So now we go to the mastering chain. And so one of the first things we do when we do that is I turn you guys way down. Check, 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 check. All right.
Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job.
It helps to take what we've learned via textbook and via lecture to actually put hands on a patient. We have a lot of people that need a condensed version of the schools where they can get back in the workforce.
I forgot a very important part to turn this
quicker.
stuff down to.
It's definitely affordable.
It helps to know that I didn't have to sell an arm and a leg just to be able to do my next step in the career choice that I wanted.
Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job.
It helps to take what we've learned via textbook and via lecture to actually put hands on a patient. We have a lot of people that need a condensed version of the schools where they.
Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job.
All right. So now we're way up at volume. You can see here, I had to turn my output to you down, so it's hard to kind of understand without seeing the levels that now we are up in actually over broadcast range, which broadcast hardly matters anymore, but it's still a thing.
Learning the skills and being hands-on is very important to be effective at your job.
It helps to take what we've learned via textbook and via lecture to actually put hands on a patient. We have a lot of people that need a condensed version of the schools where they can get back in the workforce quicker.
It's definitely affordable.
It helps to know that I didn't have to sell an arm and a leg just to be able to do my next step in the career choice that I wanted.
Learning the skills and being hands. Learning the skills and being hands-on is.
All right, so I'm running tight on time at this point, and I like to talk a lot. I think you've noticed. So again, I'm looking at that master attenuation. You know, what am I reducing? I really don't like to see more than a 5 on this last output one. In fact, with music, if you're hitting 5 on the regular, it's not going to be great. So the noise shaping really mattered more when you were going to CDs, dither, all of that stuff. Most of you probably don't remember or know what CDs are. So that hardly matters anymore. Basically what I'm doing here is
Learning the skills and being hands-on is.
I'm further compressing the parts of people's voice that are very loud and present, and you know, we're already hearing plenty of that. I want to hear nuances and the, you know, I won't say lip smacks and crap like that, but you know, more of everything. That's how voiceover guys sound so cool, because of lots of compression. Right now I'm running through that mastering chain, so it's ridiculous. But shaping, hyping, getting the overall sound here, as opposed to spending all of this time hyping every single instrument to get that extra crispy top end and all of that. You can do it, for the most part, at the front. Remember, mixing is balancing. We are in the mastering at this point, so you balance everything in the mix, you make room, you make sure everything is heard. Mastering is getting that volume, getting that overall EQ for the whole thing, and that sweetness, and just making it sound as good as possible. When you're doing this mixing for picture in particular, dialogue is king. It is absolutely king. It really doesn't matter what your fancy sound effects sound like if you can't hear what somebody's saying. And so always remember that. You know, we may love the music track on a piece, you know, on a video, but we need to hear every single word all the time, and don't count on visual cues for that. So the other thing I would say when it comes to sound for picture, particularly in commercials, television commercials or corporate videos and things like that, which is, you know, honestly what we do the most. If you're struggling with a piece of music, if no matter what you do, it's either too loud, it's distracting, it just feels off, just find something else. It's not working. If it's continuously distracting, if your client continues to call it out, like in the review process, then you've got the wrong piece of music. A lot of times you're going to have to pair that music up with the dialogue for your client and send them a couple different options to listen to, because if somebody doesn't work in production all the time, they cannot imagine the feel of a piece of music and how it would fit with that dialogue. They hyper focus on an instrument they don't like, or something about the drums. There's always something that people focus on with music because it's such a subjective and delicate topic for all of us. And so it is just best, if you're struggling with music, to be quick to change things out if it's just not working. And then if you're struggling with a client on music choice, give them options locked to the VO. Yes, it's more work for you, but it's less work than having to send ping pong things back and forth for a week, So I really hope this was helpful. I don't do this kind of thing very often, and I have quite a love for sound and really all things media, and I think simplicity is important. Making sure that the message stays key at all times. Don't do something in the sound that messes up your story. And if you're doing something that's a narrative, or an emotional piece, something that is art, music can pull the feel of something in a completely different direction. I'm sure we've all seen the YouTube trailers where they pair an unlikely piece of music with a horror film, or horror music to a Disney picture to make it sound sinister. That's how crucial music can be to something when you're trying to create emotion. And so I could go on about any one of these topics, from compression to EQ to dialogue, how to record people's voices, all of these things for, a weekend retreat. But alas, our time has pretty much come to an end, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share this with you. Ozark Film and Video Productions has been in business for 37 years. I've been here for 28 of those, and really just love doing what I do. And so thank you for letting me share it with you today, and onward and upward. Make great films, everyone. Make great films.